Yo, my name is Aster and welcome to the obligatory Fatui video for the entire month. It's been a while since I've actually made a video on anyone that isn't Scaramouche in the Fatui, so today I'm going to be doing a video on the new Fatui Harbingers that we could probably see in the near future. Disclaimer, this video is just a theory in my personal hypotheses, my personal speculations, and it isn't indicative of any final product. And today I'm going to actually be doing an update video on that old video that I used to have. If you look at my channel, there's a video there known as the All 11 Fatui Harbingers, where I basically did a theory on each of the Fatui Harbingers that I think, and I started plotting out on what rank they possibly could be. Now this one is going to be somewhat of an update to that. I'm just going to be inserting the new inclusions of the other Fatui Harbingers, and I will be changing one Fatui Harbinger that is no longer here with us. We have confirmation that Brigella is not going to be the new Harbinger, and it's going to be Arlecchino. So for the number 9 spot, I'm going to be changing Brigella with Arlecchino, because Arlecchino has been name dropped in Inazuma 2.2 or 2.3, I can't remember. So, just a refresher, the Fatui Harbingers are characters based off the Commedia dell'arte. The names Tartaglia, Scaramuccia, and La Signora and Il Dottore are all based off of the Commedia. The Commedia is basically a form of Italian theater where the characters wear masks and improvise their lines in order to make a funny and witty kind of banter between the audiences and the characters. So that's basically where the characters and the mask motif comes from. So today I'm going to be hypothesizing about the other Harbingers besides the ones that we have in the game, so I won't be including in this video Scaramouche, Signora, and Tartaglia. Instead, I will be going over the other Harbingers and giving them the sufficient love that they need, because we're eventually going to meet them, right? Like, the Fatui are the main antagonists of Genshin Impact. There is no way that not every region has a Fatui Harbinger, because there are 11 and there are only 7 or 8 regions, okay? So we're going to need to be going through that. And not to mention, I will be including the recent mentions of their characters, so let's dive right in. So the first one that we're going to be discussing is the Order of the Harbingers. Now, there was an image that was released back in the day of the Harbingers as constellations, and we don't really have any kind of basis on who is who. All we know is that Tartaglia has the whale one and Signora has the moth. Scaramouche's one is actually currently unknown at the moment, and I think we're going to be getting that when he's either a playable character or when he's a final boss. But I'm going to be guessing that his constellation is that little Japanese looking doll, or at least that little figurine with a heart on the center, just because of the husk of the opulent dreams making a lot of connotations with the word heart. And it just, makes a lot of sense given his story. But for the Order of the Harbingers, I propose the following: Pierro, Columbina, Pantalone, Dottore, Pulcinella, Scaramouche, Capitano, Signora, Arlecchino, Sandrone, and Tartaglia. One of the reasons that I actually wanted to make an update video was because I actually keep mispronouncing the name Arlecchino because I had no idea that CH in Italian was a K sound. Whoopsie! Anyway, so for the Order of the Harbingers, we already know that it is not based on age, but rather by seniority. La Signora is canonically older than Scaramouche and Tartaglia. Signora existed before the Cataclysm according to her lore, and she's at least 500 years old. Scaramouche was born after the Cataclysm, which makes him around 400 to 300 years old max. Tartaglia is a little gremlin at this point. And on a side note, that also means that maybe some of the Harbingers are also centuries old, and maybe some are just your average men having their midlife crises. We wouldn't know. There is really no in-between about the Fatui Harbingers. So in terms of order, it's basically just seniority, and it's not really confirmed if it's also about power. But now let's begin with the new Harbingers. Pierro, or the Jester. Pierro was actually name dropped a long time ago in 1.1 by Scaramouche in the Unreconciled Stars event. Basically, Pierro told Scaramouche about the meteorite, but didn't actually tell him about what happens when you touch it. And Pierro just kind of forgot that little tidbit of how the meteorite can make someone go comatose. Whoopsie! Anyway, Pierro was actually mentioned all the way in Inazuma, where he was giving orders about the Tatarigami. Does that mean that Pierro was the one that messaged Kokumi and Scaramouche just happened to be there, or was Scaramouche actually the perpetrator of the Delusions Factory, but the Tatarigami and Tatarasuna was under Pierro's jurisdiction? But moving on from that, there was actually some people that were telling me that Pierro might be based off of Otto from Honkai Impact 3. Now the thing is, I don't really know a lot about Honkai Impact. I don't even know who Otto is. All I just know is that this one picture out of context actually kind of looks like Dainsleif wearing the Pierro mask. I actually covered in another video a long time ago that Pierro and Dainsleif might have a lot more of connections than we think. But the thing is, I actually don't like the idea of Dane potentially being Pierro, and I ended that video by saying that Pierro should just be his own character because of narrative reasons. It would just be much better if Pierro was based off of someone that, yes, was Conrian, but is not Dainsleif, because Dainsleif has his own appeal of being the more neutral party. Pierro being Dainsleif would just kind of be a little bit of a cop-out, honestly, and for me, I just don't think it would work out as well as, intended. But moving on, Pierro most likely has a white and blue aesthetic, given that he is the first of the Fatui Harbingers, and the color of the Fatui is surprisingly white and blue to symbolize the polar star. In the Commedia dell'arte, Pierro, or Pedrolino, is known as the sad pathetic clown, which actually ties in very well with his mocking mask aesthetic. The lore of the mocking mask basically says that Pierro used to be a part of the court and tried to warn a foolish ruler to not go through with a plan that could antagonize the gods. Unfortunately, Pierro was not better than the sages in terms of academics, and the ruler did not listen to him. What happened was that civilization ushered in a tide of divine sin and divine retribution. Given Celestia's track record of absolutely destroying a lot of civilizations, I actually would not doubt if that's the case, that Pierro's old home or old civilization was absolutely destroyed by Celestia, and that's what motivated him to create the Fatui Harbingers along with the Tsaritsa. It's actually unknown if that civilization is Conria, but we can assume that because the Fatui were established 500 years ago after the Cataclysm, it's most likely Conria. Next is we have the second Harbinger that I believe is Columbina. Now the thing is, Columbina was never name dropped in Genshin Impact ever. The reason why I think that Columbina is a character in Genshin Impact in general is because, one, Columbina has very close ties with Pierro in this case, not to mention that there is a constellation in the wheel that basically resembles a crying dove, and Columbina is known as the little dove in the Commedia dell'arte. Columbina from the Commedia is the femme fatale motif, very similar to La Signora actually, and the thing is, she might have connections to the Adventurers Guild just because the guild would be the perfect place to scour information. Columbina from the Commedia is known as the most intelligent character and is a very known gossiper. Her having ties with the Adventurers Guild is actually super appropriate because the Adventurers Guild is a global organization where people register, and Catherine essentially has tabs and control over where the members are being sent to or where they are in Tevat. The head location is also known to be in Snezhnaya according to the NPCs, making it a very easy place for the Fatui to control. But the Fatui Harbingers essentially dominated that district because, one, it's in their homeland, and two, you cannot tell me that Catherine is not some kind of eldritch being that was, a robot. Catherine is not a suspicious figure that was probably a robot created by, the Harbingers in order to scout information. I just have no idea what Catherine is at this point. Anyway, the Adventurers Guild would be the perfect place of intelligence if the Fatui want to keep tabs on certain important figures and certain important adventurers like the Traveler, for example. Basically, if you have tabs on the adventurers, you would know who is a potential threat and how to potentially eliminate them, because you'll have track of where they are, what are their feats, what are their strengths, when they're carrying out their Adventurers Guild commissions. So the reason that I'm putting her really high on the list is because I believe she's the intelligence unit. Similar to how Dottore is the science unit and Pantalone is the economic unit, I believe it's really important that the Fatui have a dedicated intelligence network that is controlling the global affairs and international use. Pantalone. Basically, Pantalone is like that rich guy that just wants to be rich. He's the rich guy that controls the Northland Bank and basically hates the gods because he believes that they're greedy. He was born in the land of commerce, allegedly. Well, at least he says that he hails from the land of commerce, and he's a very business-minded individual that understands trade. He is responsible for the Fatui being rich. He booked out the Gothhotel in Mondstadt and owns a bank in the land of commerce. He also knows how to control other nations through their resources because he has an agent going to Mondstadt to target the wine industry, the strongest industry in Mondstadt. Pantalone is a businessman, and if you have a business like the Fatui, you are going to need him. Honestly, he is the reason why Fatui Harbingers can have that drip, why people look up to the Fatui in the first place. There is absolutely no way that the Fatui Harbingers will have that political power if they don't have the money to back it up. And this is why I think Pantalone is the linchpin of the Fatui Harbingers, even more so than Dottore, definitely even more so than Tartaglia, La Senora, and Scaramouche. But he hasn't been mentioned in Inazuma. I would just like to believe that Pantalone is just here for the money and isn't really here for the gods or, anything big. He's just here to pledge his allegiance to the Tsaritsa, but, has his own side jobs and side hustles to deal with. Honestly, he's just vibing. Now that I think about it, yeah. He is known as the greedy merchant in the Commedia, which, ties again back to money. And I actually hope that his main colors in the game are red. Red is the color of good luck and is the color of the Ampaos in Liyue. Pantalone in the Commedia also has a reddish-orange color, which would really fit his characterization if they wanted to go with something like that. For some reason, he has a pocket watch, so I kind of want him to have a monocle. Just sell that classic rich gentleman vibes that we are sorely missing from the other Harbingers. Next is we have Dottore. I believe that Dottore is the 4th Harbinger instead of the 3rd because of several reasons. First is that the number 4 in Chinese means death, which is very ironic given that he is known as the Doctor. He is the researcher that allegedly worked on Scaramouche, which already makes him higher, and Pulcinella is already the 5th Harbinger. Dottore also being high up would make a lot of sense for the Fatui starting up, because the Fatui are militaristically known for being the best. Dottore would be considered a founding father if he was the 4th. But he would have to be lower than Pantalone in my opinion, because he said that if Pierro's great nation could provide him with the resources, then he could create something greater than a god. One of the reasons that Dottore even joined the Harbingers in the first place is because he believed that they could fund him. He was actually already name dropped by Tartaglia in his story quest, but I think he's going to make a proper appearance in either Sumeru or Fontaine, because Scaramouche already headed off from Inazuma for some reason. Additionally, he had facilities in Sumeru that experimented on children. So if Scaramouche wanted help or more knowledge, Dottore would be the best person to go to just because out of sheer manic interest. It's not like Dottore has good intentions to actually help the Raiden Shogun puppet, it's just that, it will be pretty nice to tinker with something like the Gnosis, away from the prying eyes of the Tsaritsa or something. We don't know Dottore's alliance or allegiance to the Tsaritsa, so your guess is as good as mine if Scaramouche would actually trust him with the Gnosis in the first place. But on the other hand, Dottore would be the perfect antagonist for Sumeru since he's already an erudite that was blinded by his ambition, something that was brought up by Lisa regarding Sumeru's scholars, that they are blinded by their quest for knowledge. There's also trouble brewing in Sumeru according to the marvelous merchant that we currently have right now, meaning something big is going to happen in the next few patches. Next is we have Pulcinella. Pulcinella is known as the Rooster and was the one that had Ajax join the Fatui. Pulcinella was basically the one that warned against trusting Ajax, but was also the one that served as a mentor figure. He was the one that told Tartaglia that if you want to serve the Fatui, you're gonna need to start from the bottom and make your way up. But he was the one that saw the potential in Tartaglia in the first place. Pulcinella was also mentioned in the Chasm for being a part of the operations in the surface Liyue, and they also seem to be an intellectual figure. Pulcinella was actually shown in one of the character trailers. They were the ones that were shown as a silhouette with the Fatui agents surrounding them. So we're not sure if Pulcinella will be a new Harbinger, like playable Harbinger. It certainly seems that way, that if we're going to have another playable Harbinger, Pulcinella would be an okay fit. Pulcinella already has ties with Tartaglia, and Pulcinella seems to be quite amicable in a way. But your guess is as good as mine. His name literally means rooster, and that means cock. Il Capitano. I put Capitano higher than Senora because of thematic purposes. Both La Senora and Il Capitano in the Commedia are known as braggarts. And according to Victor in Genshin Impact, Capitano is apparently more favorable to work with than Senora. Capitano means captain, and in the game, there was actually a mention of a capital C captain in the chasm. This was mentioned by the starving Fatui members that apparently the traveler doesn't like the hats of. The captain allegedly said that what the Fatui are doing in Liyue are for the greater good, and the people in the chasm are working for the betterment of both Sejnayans and Liyuans. The captain also promised that no man should be left behind to die in the chasm. This would actually play well with the motif that Capitano is a liar and a braggart, one who cannot be trusted, one who says a lot of beautiful things but is actually a useless two-faced freak. We haven't met a harbinger like that, who actually lies to the faces of their subordinates to garner trust only to betray them. Even Scaramouche doesn't do that with his subordinates. But it's actually unknown if the captain that was mentioned by those Fatui is Capitano, and not just a regular captain of the branch. Though the captain was apparently not part of the mission because they separated from him after deployment. Arlecchino. Now this is the one that's going to be replacing Brigella. Arlecchino is known as the Harlequin, and this is usually where we get the motif of the happy-go-lucky jester and the one that's a little bit of a trickster archetype. All I know is that Arlecchino has an orphanage that adopts children to indoctrinate them into the Fatui way. You know, the classic. This was seen in the world quest with the fake Gendo ring. These children are given a home at the cost of total allegiance to the Fatui and the motherland. Arlecchino in the Commedia, again, is the Harlequin, so I would definitely love to see a character that is just out there in terms of personality, and, you know, maybe someone that likes adopting children and orphans. Also, by the way, there was a ploy to, like, poison the people of Sangonomiya in order to create more orphans, you know, the traditional way. Anyway, moving on. Sandrone. Now, Sandrone is actually the one with the least amount of information in the Fatui Harbingers, but this thing was dropped in Tartaglia's trailer. Now, the description in that video says Sandrone, but the Chinese one says the puppet. And the thing is, right, we already have a puppet guy, so if we have another puppeteer, I just would assume that this is really awkward for the 6th and the 10th. So we have Sandrone the puppet, or the puppeteer, or the marionette. I like to believe that it's the marionette. All we know is that Sandrone has a subordinate named Javert, and he got scolded. On a side note though, do you see this? Like, this is absolutely horrifying. Like, I like to believe that this is the marionette for Sandrone, but goddamn, if you ever told me that that was going to be something in Genshin Impact, you cannot pay me to make a character design for that. That is absolutely mortifying. But yes, that's basically my theories and my opinions on the new Fatui Harbingers that we could probably see in the next 5 years, okay? Actually, no, now that I think about it, we might be getting more Harbingers getting name dropped and stuff like that very soon, actually, because Chasm brought in at least one Harbinger, so I definitely think that they're pumping out the speed of how much the Harbingers are getting shown, and we actually don't know who's going to be the next Harbinger in Sumeru. Again, I am thinking it's Dottore, but maybe it's like 2 people instead of 1 Harbinger, and maybe it's someone else entirely. But nevertheless, yes, that's just my opinions, my speculations, and my theories on the Fatui Harbingers. My name is Aster, and thank you for chilling with me. Teacher, I have no objections to your decision, but you said that Lord Arlecchino can recall us from Inazuma at any time. And at this moment, the Shogunate and Watatsumi Island have reached a ceasefire. So, is what we're doing really necessary? That's precisely why our mission has value. Lady Senora may have met her end here in Inazuma, but that makes it the best time for us to repay Lord Arlecchino's kindness and build up his prestige. And I have always told you that as far as we are concerned, chaos is the most fertile soil. What are you wavering for, Lyutochka? This way, there will certainly be more orphans. And wouldn't that be well? We can take them in and train them. They will join us. Well, provided you complete your mission, of course.